most of the world has only ever seen one version of China: the skylines, the speed, the size of everything. But there's another version, one that rarely makes it into the headlines or the highlight reels. A version where mountains float in the mist like they were never meant to touch the ground. Where silver still gets carried on someone's head, not kept behind glass in a museum. Where entire towns glow at night, not from screens, but from paper lanterns that have done the same job for hundreds of years. This isn't a hidden theme park. It isn't a set built for tourists. It's simply the China that never had to perform for anyone, because it was never really discovered in the first place. Over the next few minutes, we're going somewhere most travel shows don't bother going. Not to see what China has built, but to see what it never stopped being. This is Zhangjiajie. More than 3,000 sandstone pillars rising out of the mountains, forming a stone forest unlike anywhere else on Earth. These very pillars inspired the floating mountains of Avatar, but unlike Pandora, these mountains are real and have stood here for hundreds of millions of years. Today, one of the tallest and longest glass bridges in the world connects two cliff faces, letting people walk right above this legendary stone forest. But beneath these famous peaks lies a world far fewer people know about: the villages of the Tujia, one of the oldest ethnic minorities in western Hunan. Their homes, Jiuzhaigou, stilt houses suspended on wooden posts, are built entirely with traditional joinery, without a single nail, yet have stood for generations. Their weddings include a ritual that stops many first-time witnesses in their tracks: the crying marriage, where the bride, her mother, and her sisters sit together and sing cry as one, sometimes for days before the wedding. It isn't real sorrow. It's a folk art form, a way for a woman to express gratitude to her parents and hope for her new life through a melody passed down across generations. Here, the mountains and the people seem carved from the same story, one reaching toward the sky, the other holding fast to the cliffside. And not far from here, another mountain has inspired an entire tradition of painting for over 1,000 years. This is Huangshan, the Yellow Mountain, one of the most painted, most written about, most referenced mountains in Chinese art for over 1,000 years. Pine trees leaning out from sheer cliffs like these have appeared in countless classical ink paintings, not artistic exaggeration, but real images that still exist today. At the foot of this mountain lie the ancient villages of the Huizhou region, including Hongkun and Shidi, two villages recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Their white-walled, black-roofed architecture, reflected in the water, creates a scene straight out of a living ink painting. This is also where the film Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was filmed. These villages were once home to some of ancient China's wealthiest merchant clans, who left behind intricately carved stone archways still standing after hundreds of years. They also left behind study halls, private family libraries, where children were taught to read and write within their own homes, based on the belief that knowledge was as precious as wealth. A mountain that once captivated poets and painters alike, and at its feet, villages that still hold on to the very beauty that once moved them to pick up a brush. But not every wonder here was shaped by nature alone. In some places, that beauty is the work of human hands, built up over thousands of years. This is the Yuanyang rice terraces, where the water on each tier reflects the sky in a different way, depending on the light and the angle you catch it from. At sunrise, an entire hillside can shift from gold to pink to purple in just a few minutes. A lighting effect so striking that many people, seeing a photo for the first time, assume it's been edited. But this isn't a natural wonder. This entire terrace system was built by the Hani people, cultivated and preserved for over 1,000 years. The Hani call it a four-part system. Forest at the top holds the water. Water flows down to feed the fields sustain the village, and the village protects the forest, a cycle recognized by UNESCO as a living heritage. Every year, when the new planting season begins, the whole village celebrates with a rice festival, wearing hand-embroidered garments that can take months to finish, passed down through generations of women in the family. Here, the line between natural landscape and human craftsmanship nearly disappears. This entire mountain has been reshaped, terrace by terrace, by hands passed down across dozens of generations. But not every strange color here was made by human hands. In some places, the earth itself has painted shades that no artist could ever replicate. This is Zhangye Danxia in Gansu province, one of the most colorful rock formations ever recorded on Earth. These bands of color formed over more than 20 million years as different mineral layers, iron, manganese, and others, settled on top of one another, then were compressed and pushed upward by the movement of the Earth's crust. Not far away are the oasis towns that once served as key stops along the ancient Silk Road, where camel caravans carried goods, ideas, and religions through for thousands of years. The mark of those traders can still be seen in the Hui community living here today, with architecture that blends Islamic domes and traditional Chinese woodwork, a rare cultural fusion. At night, these small markets still keep the same rhythm they had in the caravan days: spices, dried fruit, and pastries with a distinct Central Asian flavor, all existing right in the heart of China. Here, the rock tells a story of geological time, and the people tell a different one, of cultures that once met right in the middle of one of the harshest landscapes in Asia. And further to the southwest, another land tells its own story entirely through the color of water. This is Jiuzhaigou, a valley with dozens of lakes, each carrying its own distinct color, even when some sit just a few steps apart. That difference in color comes from varying mineral concentrations and depths. The water here is so clear that you can still see tree trunks that sank to the bottom centuries ago, perfectly preserved. This land is also home to the Tibetan people, with small monasteries tucked into the mountainsides, where hundreds of prayer flags flutter in the wind, each gust believed to carry a prayer along with it. Tibetan dress here often includes large strings of turquoise jewelry, not just decoration, but a symbol of wealth and good fortune passed down through generations within a family. During festivals, the sound of horns and bells from the monasteries echoes across the valley, a sound many describe as if it's stirring the very air around them. Here, each lake seems to carry its own mood, and the people living around them believe this land has a spirit of its own, one that must be honored through small daily rituals. And in another mountain region, on one particular night each year, an entire valley lights up, not with electricity, but with thousands of flames. This is the Torch Festival, one of the largest fire festivals in Asia, held every year by the Yi people, scattered across the mountains of Yunnan and Sichuan. Yi clothing typically features two dominant colors, black and red, with intricate hand-embroidered patterns, seen as symbols of strength and courage in their culture. According to legend, the festival traces back to a hero who used fire to defeat forces threatening the harvest, and from then on, fire became a symbol of protection, warding off evil. On the night of the festival, an entire mountain region lights up with thousands of torches. People parade through the village and the fields, believing the flames will drive away pests and bring a bountiful harvest. Once night fully falls, the festival turns into a night of dancing around the fire, where young men and women meet, and sometimes where couples find each other for good. Many describe the scene as a carnival of the mountains, where the only light in the darkness comes from human hands, not from any power grid. And not far from where those torches once burned, there's another town where the light doesn't come from a single night of bonfires, but from lanterns that have been lit every evening for hundreds of years. This is Fenghuang ancient town, more than 1,300 years old, where the river still turns a warm shade of orange-red under lantern light every evening. The stilt house architecture here has barely changed in centuries, Homes still stand firm on wooden posts driven deep into the riverbed, as if time simply stopped here long ago. Fenghuang also sits in Miao territory, where the craft of traditional silversmithing is still carried on by generation after generation of artisans. A complete silver headdress can weigh several kilograms and take weeks, sometimes months, to finish, every pattern hand-carved from start to end. These pieces are typically only worn on special occasions, festivals, weddings, moments when a Miao girl might carry silver worth a small fortune on her body alone. Here, the glow of the lanterns and the shine of the silver seem to tell the same story of a small town that learned how to hold on to its own beauty, even as the world around it kept changing. And further to the northwest, there are still people keeping a tradition that makes them look like riders straight out of legend. This is the grassland at the foot of the Tianshan Mountains in Xinjiang, home to the Kazakh community, one of the oldest nomadic peoples in Central Asia. Here, some families still practice golden eagle hunting, the Berkuchi tradition, thousands of years old. These eagles are typically trained from a young age and can stay with a single family for years before being released back into the wild once they grow older. A rider galloping across the snow, an eagle perched on his arm. This is one of the closest things left in the world today to a rider straight out of legend. Outside of hunting, their lives still revolve around the yurt, where stories of the grassland are passed down to the next generation. Every year, hunting families from across the region gather for eagle festivals, where the skill of training and the bond between human and bird are celebrated, not as a sport, but as an inseparable part of who they are. Here, the bond between people and a bird of prey has been kept fully intact. A reminder that not every wonder lies in the landscape itself, but sometimes in the relationship between humans and nature. And in another region to the northeast, the cold isn't something to endure. It's the raw material for building an entirely new fairy tale world, once a year. This is Harbin in Heilongjiang province, where every winter an entire city is rebuilt from scratch, made entirely of ice and snow. Each year, thousands of blocks of ice are cut straight from the frozen Songhua River, then sculpted by artisans into castles, bridges, and towers dozens of meters tall. When night falls, LED lights inside each block switch on, turning the whole park into a glowing, multicolored world, one that only exists for a few winter months, before melting away completely when spring arrives. Harbin also carries a cultural imprint rarely found elsewhere in China. Old Russian architecture, left over from when this city was once a crossroads between Russian and native Manchu culture. Even in cold that can drop to -20 degrees, the street markets here stay lively, with dishes carrying a Russian influence blended with local flavors creating a food culture found nowhere else. Here, the harshest cold of winter becomes the raw material for one of the most dazzling sights of the year. Proof that even the harshest conditions nature offers can be turned into something magical. From pillars rising through the clouds, to prayer flags fluttering in the wind, to a castle that exists for only a few months before vanishing. Every place on this journey carries a piece of the same story. This is Lijiang, an ancient town more than 800 years old, where water from the snow-capped Jade Dragon Mountain still trickles through its narrow alleys day and night. This is also home to the Naxi people, keepers of Dongba, the only pictographic writing system in the world still in use today. Each character is almost a small painting, telling a story rather than just representing a sound. Not far away is Lugu Lake, home to the Mosuo, one of the last matriarchal societies still existing in the world. Here, property and lineage pass down through the mother's line, and the oldest woman in the family is usually the one who makes the most important decisions. The Mosuo also keep a distinctive marriage custom known as walking marriage, where men and women don't live together. The man visits only at night, then returns to his mother's home the next morning, while any children are raised entirely by the mother's family. Here, a family structure that much of the world considers a thing of the past, or something only found in books, is still being fully lived out every day, not as a relic, but as a way of life that continues. And so, our journey has passed through every shape wonder can take. Through stone, through water, through fire, and now through the very way a family can be built differently from anything we thought we knew. We've passed through mountains that look like they don't belong to this earth, waters no painter could ever recreate, festivals that light up entire valleys with nothing but fire. But what makes all of these places truly extraordinary isn't the scenery. It's that there are still people living exactly this way right now. Not to reenact the past, but because for them, this still is the present. Silver headdresses are still worn. Eagles are still trained. A family by Lugu Lake is still built the way they've always built it, with no need for anyone else's approval. That's exactly why the most beautiful wonders here never needed to be famous to exist. They simply keep being themselves in places most of the world never thought to look. Maybe fairy tales don't disappear as the world becomes more modern. They're just waiting in the places we've never once stopped to see.